What's happening, everybody, and a happy 2015 to you all. It is me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and it is time for the 2015 NFL playoffs. They are finally upon us here. It is Wildcard Weekend. We've got two great matchups in the AFC, two great matchups in the NFC, and it's time to talk about them, give you some predictions. The get-up has changed a little bit, but the picks are just as good. Now, we're going to get into talking about these. If you're wondering about how I did in Week 17, my end-of-the-season results, who won Week 17 in the Pick'em pool, all that information is going to be in the description of the video below. We're not going to waste any time talking about that. Just as a reminder to anybody who happens to be in the Pick'em pool, the Pick'em pool is continuing through the playoffs. I've only seen about 6 or 7 managers right now in the Pick'em pool having actually made playoff picks. So just a reminder, if you're in the pool and you're watching this, this thing's not over yet. We're still going through the playoffs. So I guess it's time to get into the picks, but I feel like I need a little confidence booster. You know what I mean? I feel like I need a totem, a token of prognosticating power, and I guess I'll just have to settle for my 2013 Geo Knows Award for Most Entertaining Prognosticator. As you may have noticed in the previous video that I put out, the 2014 voting is underway for the Geo Knows Awards, the 4th annual Geo Knows Awards. I am up for Video Production of the Year, Most Entertaining Prognosticator again, as well as Prognosticator of the Year. All the information on how to vote for me in the 2014 Geo Knows Awards is in the description of this video as well. Don't listen to Jason P. from Team Take'em. He seems to know how these things are going to go down. He don't know shit. Make your voices heard and vote for Bridgewater's Finest. Alright, so now that the shilling and the happy horse shit is out of the way, let's get into some of these picks. Usually I would start in the AFC, but I think we're going to start in the NFC this time around. We got two really good matchups, like I mentioned. We got the number 3-seeded Dallas Cowboys taking on the number 6-seeded Detroit Lions, and we've got the number 4-seeded surprise Carolina Panthers taking on the number 5-seeded Arizona Cardinals. Let's start in that top game there, the 3v6. Once again, that is the number 3-seeded Dallas Cowboys, 12-4 on the season, 4-4 at home, hosting the number 6 seed Detroit Lions, 11-5 on the season, only 4-4 on the road. These two teams did not play each other this season. They have not had a meeting since October of 2013. In that game, Matthew Stafford and the Lions engineered a comeback, winning 31-30 over Dallas. That game was in Detroit. And the last 10 head-to-head matchups have been split 5-5. This is a matchup of Dallas's number 7 ranked total offense from this past season, averaging just over 29 points per game, taking on Detroit's number 2 total defense on the season. Ironically enough, Detroit's offense and Dallas's defense both ranked number 19 overall on the season. Looking at how Dallas has performed at home versus how Detroit has performed on the road, the overall gap gets a little bit bigger. But it is worth noting Dallas's offense does take a dip when they're in their own stadium, only averaging 24 points per game. The other side of that coin is that Detroit's offense goes completely anemic on the road, averaging only 15.6. Biggest X factor I see here for the Cowboys is flipping that script. The script says Tony Romo and the Cowboys can't win in December. They play awful in December. They choke in the playoffs. Well, for all the Cowboys doubters, choke on this. In December, Dallas 4-0, outscored their opponents 165-79. I'm not saying all those teams were world beaters, but the fact that they could go 4-0 in December and really flip that script is a huge momentum builder and a huge X factor for the Cowboys. Biggest X factor I see here for the Lions, they need to win the air battle in this game. Stafford has to outplay Romo, and Megatron has to outplay Des Bryant. If those things don't happen, Detroit's got no chance. Since I'm doing the over-unders in these games, I'm actually going to start with the over-under on each pick. Now, as I mentioned before, the total in this game is 48. I'm going to tell you to go over 48. These are two decent defenses here, as we said. Detroit's the number 2 overall defense. But the Lions have a way of kind of being these comeback kids this season. They've been known for kind of coming back late in games. I kind of expect that there might be a garbage touchdown here, or just a late touchdown that could push this total to the over. I'm going to play a little safe here. I'm going to tell you to take over 48 points. Straight up in this game, I like Dallas, and one of the main reasons I like Dallas here is because the game is in Dallas, and just the fact that Detroit's offense just totally disappears on the road. The Lions' road scoring average is -4 points on average per game, while the Cowboys' home scoring average is plus 3.5 points. That's a pretty big differential there, and the boys just have all the momentum going into this game. I think they keep it going. I think they continue silencing those doubters about their December performances and come up with a big win here against Detroit. How big of a win? I'm going to tell you to take Dallas minus 6.5 on the line as well. Lions defense has been good all season, but until Dallas shows that their momentum has cooled, you got to go with them if they're under a touchdown. As far as I'm concerned, you got to ride that wave. So I'm going to tell you to take Dallas minus 6.5 against Detroit. The other matchup in the NFC sees the number 4 seeded Carolina Panthers, 7-8-1 on the season, champions of the NFC South, but 4-4 at home, taking on the number 5 seeded Arizona Cardinals, 11-5 on the season, only 4-4 on the road. The Panthers are favored by a whopping 6.5 points at home, despite being a team that's under 500, and the total for this game is a minuscule 38. These two teams did not play this season. Their last meeting, like the other matchup in the NFC, was also in October of 2013. That game was a 22-6 win by the Cardinals in Arizona. The last 10 head-to-head matchups, however, have been dominated by the Panthers, winning 7. Carolina had a pretty average offense this year, only ranking 16th in the NFL, although very quietly they had a top 10 total defensive season ranking at exactly number 10, giving up about 23.4 points per game. Arizona shockingly had the number 24 total defense in football this year in terms of yardage, but were the very definition of a bend but don't break defense, only giving up 18.7 points per game. Carolina averages 18.3 points per game at home. Arizona averages 18.4 points per game on the road. Carolina averages 19.8 points allowed at home. Arizona averages 19.9 points allowed on the road. All averages out 19-19. It's a total push. As far as I'm concerned, this game does come down to these X factors. The biggest X factor for the Panthers is, at this point, frankly, they've got nothing to lose. I mean, they barely got in to begin with. They really don't have any expectations put on them in these playoffs, being an under 500 team. You got to embrace that role, embrace the role of the supposed underdog, even though they're the betting favorite in this game. And they have to embrace Jonathan Stewart, because any damage that they're going to do in the playoffs is going to be on his back. The biggest X factor for the Cardinals on the road is going to be that quarterback carousel, and whoever it is that ends up playing quarterback for Arizona could be one of the ticket vendors at this point. But whoever does end up playing quarterback for the Cardinals, can they handle that big game pressure, that big game atmosphere, especially being on the road? Let's take a look at that number, 38, very small number. I'm still going to tell you to take the under on it. It is a small number. I'll totally admit that. But Carolina has had 3 straight games and 6 of their last 10. And Arizona has had 5 of their last 10, plus the last head-to-head matchup between these two teams, all not only going under, but going under 38. Even if it's a one-sided game and a blowout, 38 points I think is too much. So it's a bit of a gamble, but I'm going to tell you to take under 38. Straight up, I like the Panthers in this game. I know they're under 500, but I definitely like Carolina to win this game. That offense is kind of misleading. Like over the last 4 games, the offense has gotten better, but a couple of those teams were real cupcakes in terms of defense. But the defense has picked it up, as we said, top 10 overall defense in 2014. And the Cardinals are really beat up, especially at the most important position on the field, and I think they're too beat up to keep up. So my betting money is going on Carolina. But not on the spread. Carolina minus 6.5 is a little too ridiculous for me, especially given that the team on the other side is 11-5. Yeah, 4 of their 5 losses have been on the road, but even so, they're still an 11-5 football team with a good defense. So I like Arizona plus 6.5 here in what's probably going to be a low-scoring game. Plus, Arizona is a perfect 7-0 against the spread this season when they are a betting underdog of 6.5 points or better. There's the NFC, folks. let's move into the AFC here. The 3 versus 6 game in the AFC is the Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Baltimore Ravens in what is going to be just a beautiful football game. And the number 4 seed Indianapolis Colts will be playing host to the number 5 seed Cincinnati Bengals. Let's take a look at that 3v6 game there. The Pittsburgh Steelers again playing host to the Baltimore Ravens. Pittsburgh 11-5 on the year, 6-2 at home, played really well in the friendly confines of Heinz Field this year. The Baltimore Ravens, the number 6 seed, 10-6 on the season, and only 4-4 on the road. The Steelers are favored by 3 points here at home, with the total being 46.5. Pittsburgh and Baltimore met twice this season, each team taking a game, each team taking the game at home. The game that was played in Baltimore in Week 2, the Ravens won that game 26-6, pretty decisive, and the Week 9 game that was played in Heinz Field, Pittsburgh with a great performance there, winning that game 43-23. The last 10 head-to-head matchups, as you might expect, have been split 5-5. Part of why I think this game is going to be so great is the number 8 ranked overall defense of the Baltimore Ravens, so a top 10 overall defense, against the top 5 overall offense in Pittsburgh this year. They had the number 2 offense in the NFL this year, averaging over 27 points scored per game. Meanwhile, Baltimore had the number 12 offense in the NFL this year, which is, of course, nothing to shake a stick at. The Steelers, on the lower end of things defensively, number 18 overall defense. Pittsburgh averaged 32 points per game in Heinz Field this year, so their offense takes a huge pickup when they are at home. Baltimore's road defense actually gets a little bit worse, almost by a full touchdown. They've given up 24 points per game on the road this year. The biggest X factor here for the Steelers, aside from the health and availability of Le'Veon Bell, because that is still up in the air, the biggest X factor that we know and can talk about is that defense, the fact that the defense does get a little lax when they're at home, and whether that defense can stay hot, because they played really well in the last couple of weeks. They looked like that old-time Steelers defense, but can that defense stay hot against an underrated and actually really good Baltimore wide receiver core? The biggest X factor that I see for the Ravens is going to be that run game. Of all the running backs on the Ravens roster, they only combine for 6 games of playoff experience, 4 of those belonging to Bernard Pierce, and none since 2012. So that run game, this is a big stage for them, and can they turn around and perform on that big stage? Again, we go to the total, 46.5 points. I'm actually going to tell you to take the over on this 46.5. It's 2 teams predicated on defense, yes, but you have to take a look at the reality of this season, and the reality of this season is these are 2 top 12 offenses, so I like this game to go over 46.5. I think if this game was 56.5, I may have possibly considered taking the over on it as well, but 46.5, definitely take the over. Straight up, this is the one that I flipped the coin on the most, and straight up, I'm actually going to tell you to take Baltimore here. Baltimore in what it does amount to a pretty big upset, and it's been a huge season for Pittsburgh's offense in 2014. That passing offense has been really good on the back of Antonio Brown, who is fantastic. But I don't know that they beat Baltimore, because I think Baltimore offensively is going to be able to keep this game close, and they're really going to be able to stay in it. And these 2 teams always get up for playing each other. These are always really close games. Missing Le'Veon Bell one more time is going to be crippling for the Steelers, so much so that I don't think they get by the Ravens. So it's an upset. I'm going to embrace that, but I'm going to tell you to take Baltimore straight up. So on the line, obviously, I'm going to tell you to take Baltimore +3. Even if Baltimore loses this game, these 2 teams are so similar that a field goal at the end of regulation to win the game, or a field goal in overtime or something, is totally viable as a way that this game could end. Therefore, maybe it's hedging my bets a little bit, maybe it's playing it safe, but I'm going to take those 3 points and tell you to take Baltimore +3. And the final matchup we're going to look at this week, of course, the number 4 Indianapolis Colts playing host to the number 5 Cincinnati Bengals. Colts were 11-5 on the season, put up a very good 6-2 record at home. Cincinnati was 10-5-1 on the year with a 5-3 record on the road. Colts are favored by 3.5 points here at home. The total for this game currently sits at 49.5. The season series here is an emphatic 1-0 Indianapolis with a 27-0 victory against Cincinnati in Indianapolis in Week 7. The last 10 head-to-head matchups have been dominated by the Colts 8-2, but you do have to go back to 1998 to get those 10 matchups. The Colts boasted the number 3 overall offense in football this year, averaging over 406 yards per game. And again, very quietly, kind of like Carolina, Indianapolis had the number 11 overall ranked defense in football this year, giving up only about 23.1 points per game and allowing under 350 yards per game. Cincinnati's defense was also in that Arizona bend but don't break category, only giving up 21.5 points per game despite only being the number 22 ranked overall defense, where the offense ranked in at number 15 overall. The Colts offense stays true to their season average, averaging 28 points per game in the friendly confines this year, where Cincinnati is averaging giving up about 19 points per game on the road. Cincinnati's offense, unfortunately, also only scoring about 19 points per game on the road this year. The Colts defense gets quite a bit better, actually, when they're in the friendly confines. They've only averaged 18 points allowed per game in Indianapolis this year. Biggest X factor here for the Colts, no, at 100% no pun intended here, I actually think the Colts got the lucky draw. Luck in the Colts offense is only averaging about 19 points per game in their last 4 games. And Cincinnati is arguably the best draw for a struggling offense. This team gives up a lot of yards, as we said, number 22 overall defense this year. And this is the kind of defense in terms of yardage allowed that Andrew Luck and the Colts kind of need to break their offense out of this funk. Biggest X factor for the Bengals, they got to ride the hot hand, and there's just no other question about it. Jeremy Hill has put up 5 games of 100 or more rushing yards on the season, and in his last 3 games has touched the ball 73 times for 409 all-purpose yards and 3 touchdowns. Indianapolis only has the number 18 ranked run defense in football this year. Jeremy Hill needs to exploit that. They might need to give him the ball 30-35 times. The over-under here, 49.5. I'm actually going to tell you to go under on that number, 49.5. Both teams tend to play better defensively in this situation. Again, Indianapolis at home, Cincinnati on the road. I just think 49.5. I think it's just a little bit too much here, especially where the Colts offense has been struggling. So 49.5, I'm going to tell you to take the under. Straight up here, I like the Colts all day. I think the Colts offense is too good to keep struggling, even with a couple of injuries and underperforming stars that they have this year. I think they are too good to keep struggling the way that they have been. This is Andrew Luck's time. He's a third-year quarterback now. He's got enough experience under his belt to start building that playoff legacy. I think he starts building that playoff legacy right here this year with an emphatic victory over Cincinnati. So on the line, I'm also going to tell you to take Indianapolis minus 3.5. That only makes sense. It's not too many points to give. There's some blowout potential there because Cincinnati's offense has been not very good this year at times. And if Indy's offense really wakes up in this game, there's the potential for this to be a huge blowout. Indianapolis minus 3.5. There we go, folks. There's the Wildcard Weekend playoff picks for you. Going to go over them here with you one more time. Starting in the NFC, the 3v6 matchup, Detroit at Dallas. I like Dallas straight up. I like Dallas minus 6.5 on the line. I like the game to go over 48 points. 4 versus 5, Arizona at Carolina. Straight up, I like Carolina. I like the Panthers at home. I like Arizona plus 6.5 on the line, and I like the game to stay under that small number of 38. We go over to the AFC, the 3v6, Baltimore at Pittsburgh. I like the road team there. I like Baltimore to beat Pittsburgh. I like Baltimore plus 3 on the line. I like the game to go over 46.5 points. And in the AFC 4 versus 5, Cincinnati at Indianapolis. I like Indianapolis to win the game straight up. I like Indianapolis minus 3.5 on the line. And I like the game to stay under 49.5 points. That's it for me for Wildcard Weekend. Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. Once again, don't forget to vote for me in the 2014 Geo Knows Awards and show Jason P. from Team Take'em that he doesn't know what he's talking about. geoknows.com/awards.php. That link is in the description below. Thank you very much for checking out the Wildcard Weekend picks. We will see you next week for the divisional round.